Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. The Stanley 49 is an adjustable tongue and groove plane. No, it's not. It's an auger bit depth stop. Ooh, another argument. Let's get into this. Stanley was fond of counting, and all of their planes are numbered in order of when they were produced, with the exception of the 1 through the 8, which those are by size. After that, they just said, well, we're making the next plane, so after 8 comes 9, after 9 comes 10, after 10 comes 11. Except for every now and then they're like, let's skip a few numbers and then jump to the next one. Stanley's numbering system is a bit confusing, and yeah, it has sparked many different debates. But one of the interesting things is this is a Stanley 48. It is a swing arm tongue groove plane, so you can do a tongue work and you turn it around and now you're doing the grooving work. It's kind of nice to be able to have both planes in one. And then they made this with a few other styles. They made the Stanley 49 with narrower cuts, but later on then they came out with one of these. And what number do they give it? They also give it the 49. Stanley also made a number 47 depth stop. Unfortunately, I don't have a version of that to show you. It's a little bit more rare and it's not as good of one. But that also corresponds with the Stanley number 47 plane. So Stanley, not very good at counting, but making some really cool tools. So let's actually take a look at what this weird thing is. So we've got an auger bit and we want to bore a hole, but we only want to bore it so deep. We want to make sure we don't go too deep. So how do we stop this at that depth? Well, number one, we can know the pitch on the threads. If our threads are 16 per inch, then we know that every 16 rotations is 1 inch of depth. And so you can actually count the number of rotations to figure out its depth. And that works fairly well, but sometimes it's a little inaccurate, sometimes there's a little slip, and it's not always the best method. So the first thing most people are going to say is, well, grab some tape and make a flag. And that actually works relatively well on twist bits, because there's a large flat surface for them to connect to. But with Irwins, there's not a large flat surface, so actually getting an accurate flag on one of these is very difficult, and you're never going to get something that is right on, because you put it on there, well, this is going to want to crush up, and it's just not a very accurate way of doing it. On the Jennings bits, it works a little bit better because there's 2 flutes going all the way up, whereas on this, there's only 1 flute. Most of the modern augers, it actually works really well because you have these large flat areas. But for Irwins, it really doesn't work all that great. My favorite solution to the problem are these depth stops. They are great. They have a bearing on them so that they spin, they don't mark up the wood, and with that one set screw in there, you can actually clamp down on regular Irwin bits. So you can drive the set screw in and it actually clamps up against the main shaft holding this in place. And then when it gets to a depth stop, this spins and works really well. The nice thing about these is they work on any auger out there. They will work even on the wood owls with the 3 flutes. They will even work on twist bits. And so these are really universal. They kind of have the best of all things. The problem is you need a whole set because you need one for every size. And unfortunately they come in metric, and so I've got a whole bunch of them here. And so whenever I need one, I'm like, is it this one? No. Is it this one? No. Is it this one? Is it no? And you have to actually go through a bunch of them. Before my grandfather was even born, Stanley said, I have an answer, and came up with the Stanley 49. This is a really odd little contraption. It has 2 of these cast plates that are exactly the same, just one either side, and it has 2 wing bolts going through that lock onto it. And this has the nice thing is that it's fully adjustable, so it will do any of your auger bits. So to fit it on, you slide it in from the back, and then you rotate it up to close to where you want it to be. You pinch them together, you tighten down the 2 wing nuts, and it is adapted for this size of auger bit. You get it kind of tight, you get it close to where you want, and then you can rotate the auger bit to put a fine adjustment on how deep you want it to be. Once you get it there, you lock it in, and you drill a test hole. It does look a little bit funky as it's going, but if it works, I guess that's what matters, right? What I like to do is drill 1 hole to the depth you want it to be, and then put the auger back in until the blades just engage. And now we can adjust this to the exact depth we want it to be. And you can make sure that these feet then sit flat on the wood. With that on there, we can tighten it down. And now we know we're going to be drilling to that depth. If I really crank these down, I can generally get it to disengage, but I'm probably going to be destroying the wood. And you can see there, it has disengaged at that depth, so it's just spinning. So now I can put another one right beside it and drill into the exact same depth. And it disengages at that depth. There are a few downsides to this. Number one, it generally only works with older style twist bits, but it doesn't work as well with the owl bits. It will work with Jennings, it will work with Irwin, but it doesn't work as well with the others. Number two, it's a little fiddly to get in there. You got to kind of work it back and forth and play with it until you get it where you want it. But once it's dialed in, it actually works really well. Number three, on softwoods, you're going to get these bruising marks around the hole. Unless you go until the bits just touch, then you won't. But if you're doing it for a full disengagement, you're going to get this bruising around. It's not as much of a problem on harder woods, but on soft woods, you'll notice it. They're not as common as a Stanley No. 4 or Stanley No. 5. Stanley just didn't make as many of them. There wasn't as much of a demand. But they are very useful, and if you are going with antique designs, they are incredibly useful for when you want that exact same depth. And if you're using Irwin's and Jennings bits, they're the best ones in the market. They're even better than these, which I absolutely love these for pretty much every other bit. But for Irwin's and Jennings, this is the one I'm probably going to be grabbing most of the time. As of right now, I just went on eBay and there were 4 listings for these for about 30 bucks. You can usually pick them up for somewhere around $25 to $30. I occasionally find them at MWTCA meets for $20 or so. So they're relatively cost effective, especially in comparison to the individual sets. And they're a great little tool. Very, very simple, and just 2 screws holding together 2 plates, and voila, you've got a depth stop. If you're just getting into woodworking, this is not one of those tools that you need. It's a nice to have. It's something that I use 6 or 7 times a year. It's not absolutely necessary, and most of the time I'm just going to count rotations and that'll give me the exact same thing I'm looking for. But every now and then, it's really useful, especially when I want to drill a whole bunch of holes all the same depth. So if you have a project coming up where you're drilling a lot of mortises and you want to auger out a lot of the waste, this can be worth its weight in gold, because all of your depths on all of your mortises go to the same point, so you can have that predetermined depth that you have to then cut down to. And that's really, really useful. But if you're not going to be doing a lot of mortises or any big mortises, probably not worth it. So I hope you like this little interesting look at the Stanley No. 49, or the other Stanley No. 49. It's one of those fun things about the Stanley numbering system is, yeah, it's kind of all over the place. One of the reasons why I generally, when I'm talking about a tool, I'll call it by a name rather than by the number, but names also have a lot of other differences, especially when you go culture to culture and tradition to tradition. But thankfully, an auger bit depth stop, that's a pretty descriptive name, and so yeah, you can look those up relatively easily. This is one of those topics where there's a lot of other interesting history on it, so if you have something specific to add to that, throw that down in the comments down below. I do read for that, and I learn a lot from the comments, so thank you for that. That does mean a lot. If you would like to find out more about this, putting comments, questions, and snide remarks down below does help out the algorithm, so thank you for that. As well as hitting like, share, subscribing, those things do help us get in front of more people and help this channel to grow. So thank you. That does actually help us out and means a lot. If you want to take it one step farther, there are a bunch of people who are scrolling over here on the side right now. They are the patrons on Patreon. They are the ones quite literally keeping the lights on and keeping this channel going, as well as members on YouTube who've clicked that little join button down below. We have special perks for both, where we do monthly hangouts and quarterly hangouts, as well as behind the scenes. We'll turn the camera on while we're working in here from time to time. There's a lot of fun things happening on there, so thank you for that. We are sponsored by you, the viewers, and without you, this channel wouldn't exist. So until next time, have a wonderful day. This is by far the coolest tool in the shop, because this is what stops the boring parts.